Hey class, Mr. Andrew here. For today's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at section 17.1, which is going to deal with the equation of a circle. Now, for today's lesson, we have one learning goal, and our learning goal for today is that you will be able to write the equation of a circle given the center and radius and from a graph. So we're going to talk about what the equation of a circle is. We're going to talk about that specific equation. Then we're going to talk about how to write the equation of a circle when you're given the center and radius, and then when you're given a graph. So we're going to talk about those two things today. Now, before we jump into today's lesson, I just want to note 17.1 is the only section we're doing from Module 17. So just something I want to make you aware of and just note. So with that said, let's talk about this equation of a circle. Now, a circle, you should fairly well know what that shape is. Let's talk about what the equation of that circle is. Now, the equation of a circle with the center h, k and radius r is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So all you need to know and have to write the equation of a circle is the center of the circle and what the radius of that circle is. Now, the center of the circle is going to be considered a coordinate point x, y, but instead of x, y, we're going to refer to it as h, k, so that way we can distinguish where that value needs to go. So x minus h, the h comes from the x value of the center. Y minus k, k comes from the y value of the center. And then the r is the radius. So, for every problem, if you're writing the equation of a circle, you need to know the center, h, k, and the radius, r. So, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into our first example for today, which is going to have us write the equation of a circle given a center and radius. So if we look at example 1 for parts A through F, they tell us what the center and the radius is for each part, and they want us to go through and write an equation for each of those circles. So example 1 tells us just that. And if we look at part A, they tell us that the center is at -2, 5, and it has a radius of 3. So we're going to use this equation to go through and use this information to write an equation. All right, now I find when you go through and do these problems, the first thing you need to do is define what your h, your k, and your r are for each problem. So if we look at example 1, part A, they tell us the center is at -2, 5. Well, the center is considered h, k. So that means -2 is my h value, and that means 5 is considered my k value. So now that I know my h and my k, the last thing I need to know is my radius r, which in this case is 3. So now that I've defined my h, k, and r, we're just going to plug these values in for h, k, and r into this equation, simplify, and then we have our answer. So, first up, for A, I'm going to rewrite the formula, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So that is our equation. We're going to plug in the values of h as -2, k as 5, and r as 3 into this equation. So x minus h becomes x minus a -2 squared plus y minus k is y minus 5 squared, and then r squared is just 3 squared. All right, from here, we just need to simplify each part. The key things for simplifying is anytime you have minus and negative, you need to change it to a positive, and then we need to evaluate the 3 squared at the end. So because this is x minus a negative 2, that becomes x plus 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared is going to stay the same. That's simplified as is. And then all we have to do left is 3 to the power of 2, which gives us 9. The main thing that you have to simplify for every problem is you have to take the r squared and evaluate the power of 2 to whatever r is, whether it's 3, square root of 5, 4, square root of 3, and so on. Whatever that r value is, you actually have to evaluate that to the power of 2. And then it only depends if there's ever a minus and negative. Anything that's minus is really just considered simplified. So that is in fact our final answer for example 1, part A. X plus 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 9. And that's how you write the equation of a circle when given the center and radius. All right, so that is how you're going to go through and do example 1, part A through F. Now, before we jump to example 2, there are a couple others I want to do just to give us some more practice and a few more examples to reference and to talk about a few things. So if we take a look at B, they tell us that the center is at 4, negative 1, and that the radius is at the square root of 5. So 4, negative 1 is my h and my k, and then the square root of 5 is my radius, my r. So now that I have my h and my k and my r value, we can go through and use the equation to fill in that info. So the equation is x minus h, so it's x minus 4 squared plus y minus k, so it's y minus a negative 1 squared equals r squared. Our r value is the square root of 5 squared. So I now have x minus 4 squared plus y minus a negative 1 squared equals the square root of 5 squared. So going through and simplifying the different parts, x minus 4 squared stays the same, plus minus a negative for the y minus a negative 1. Minus negative becomes positive, so it's y plus 1 squared equals the square root of 5 squared. Anytime that you have the square root and it's squared, that just cancels out the square root and the squared. To show you on the calculator real quick for that, just to give you a point of reference, if I take the square root of, in this case, 5, and I square it, we end up with 5. So that square root and squared just goes away. So this just becomes 5. And that is our answer for part B. X minus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 5. And you're just going to run through and do the same thing for parts C, D, E, and F. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Figure out your h, k, and r. Plug those values in for h, k, and r. You just have to simplify any minus negatives to positives, just like we did for parts A and B. If there is no minus and negatives, then it's just simplified as is, and all you have to do is evaluate the radius squared. So 3 to the power of 2 is 9, square root of 5 to the power of 2 is 5. And that's all you have to do for C, D, E, and F. Now, for matter of time, I'm going to leave those ones for you to do on your own time. By all means, you can always take a look at my completed notes to see how you do parts C, D, E, and F. If you want to practice those on your own, by all means you can. Otherwise, we're going to move on from there. So, if you have a question over C, D, E, or F, and my completed notes aren't making sense, or you need a little more clarification, just let me know. All right, example 2 is going to give us a graph, and they want us to go through and write an equation for that circle. So instead of telling us right off the bat what our center and radius are, we have to go through and figure out what the center and radius are, and then we can go through and plug this stuff into the equation. So if we look at example 2, part A, we have our circle right here. We need to do two things. We need to figure out our center and then figure out what our radius is. Now, the center for this circle is going to be right here, which is at 1, negative 1. So our center is at 1, negative 1. And then we need to figure out our radius, which our radius is the distance from the center to the edge. So I like to go through and draw a line from the center to the edge on the grid lines because it's easier to count what the radius is instead of using the distance formula. But if it's at 1, negative 1, if we go over 1, 2, we end up at the edge of the circle, telling us that our radius is 2. So if the center is at 1, negative 1, and our radius is at 2, we have all of the information we need to write the equation of a circle. Remember, h, k is what the values for the center are. So our h value is 1, our k value is negative 1, and our r value is 2. So if we go through and write the equation of a circle, which I've put up here in the top right to reference, if we have x minus h, and h is 1, that means it's going to be x minus 1 squared plus y minus k. Our k value is negative 1, so it's y minus a negative 1. So minus a negative becomes plus, so it becomes y plus 1 squared equals r squared, which are r squared, 2 to the power of 2 is going to give us 4. And that is the equation to the circle for example 2, part A. And that's how you write the equation of a circle when given a graph. So the key is to go through, figure out what the center of the circle is, and then once you have that center, figure out the radius, and then just plug in your information. Now, if you're uncertain if your value is the center, okay, whatever your radius is, it should be the radius all the way around. So if I use this, remember we found the radius to be 2 going across. If I went backwards, it would be 1, 2. If I went up, it would be 1, 2. If I went down, it would be 1, 2. So the radius is the same all the way around. 4 points, double checking, is way more than enough to make sure that is your center. All right, so with that said, let's take a look at another one. Let's look at B. For part B, our center is going to be right here. So that is the center, and that center is at negative 2, 3. So that is my h, and that is my k values. Negative 2 for my h, 3 for my k. Now that I have my center, we just have to figure out what our radius is from the center to the edge of the circle. And that's going to be at 1, 2, 3. So that means our radius is 3. All right, so now that I have my center and my radius, I have everything I need to write my equation. So if it's x minus h, my h value is -2. So minus a -2 is plus. So this is x plus 2 squared plus y minus k. My k value is 3, so it's y minus 3 squared equals r squared, and my r value is 3, so 3 to the power of 2 is 9. So my answer is x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 9. And that is how you go through and write the equation of a circle. When you're given a graph, you have to figure out the center, figure out your radius, and then you can plug everything in. Now, I'm not going to go through and write the equation for every circle for parts C, D, E, and F, but what I do want to highlight real quick is the center and the radius, just to give you more practice on seeing it done. So, for C, our center is going to be right here at -2, 4. And then if we go through and figure out our radius, it's going to be 1, 2. So our radius for C is 2. Then for D, the center of our circle here is going to be right there, which is at 0, 3. And then to figure out our radius, it's going to be over 1, 2, 3. So our center of the circle is at 0, 3, and the radius for this one is at 3. Now, one thing to note for this equation, because it is a 0, it would be x minus 0 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 9. That equation works for this problem, but in case for some reason it's unhappy with that, we could also simplify this to x squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 9. So if you ever have a minus 0, you can always just change that to an x squared or a y squared. But hopefully it should allow you to put the minus 0 if you do plug it in. But just know if you ever have a minus 0 and it's telling you it's wrong, something to check would be maybe to change it to x squared. All right, and then for parts E and F, for E, the center of the circle is going to be right there at 3, -1. And then the radius is going to be to the right 1, 2, 3. So that means our radius is 3. And then for our last problem, for F, our center of our circle is going to be right there, which is at 2, 1. And then the radius, it's just going to be over 1. So it means our radius is 1. And that is that. So, just to give you one to wrap up on writing the equations, Remember our h comma k for the center. So it's x minus h, so it's going to be x minus 2 squared plus y minus k, which is 1, so y minus 1 squared equals 1 squared, or r squared, which is 1 squared, which is just 1. And that is the equation of the circle for part F. So that is it for today's lesson on section 17.1 on writing the equation of a circle. Again, the key for this lesson is this equation right here, this x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Once you have your center, your h comma k, and your radius r, then you can go through and write your equation. So find your center, find your radius. Some of the problems, they'll tell you the center and the radius. Other problems you'll have to go through and figure it out. All right, so that is it for today on our lesson for 17.1. As always, if you ever have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and let me know. I'll be more than happy to help. Otherwise, that is it for today. Send me an email or just let me know the next time you see me if you have questions on the notes or on the homework, and I'll be more than happy to guide you through those. All right, so that is it for today. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you found this helpful. Otherwise, that's all for today, and I will talk to you guys later. All right, bye.